The manhunt is over as Baltimore police announced the capture of suspected killer Jason Billingsley. He was finally caught at the train station in Bowie just after 11 p.m. last night after more than a week on the run.
I know this arrest does not bring back Pava LaPere or take away the heels of the many victims of Mr. Billingsley. But my hope is at least we can give a sense of closure to the city of Baltimore, the victims of all of his crimes and all their families.
Billingsley had 3 warrants out for his arrest, including for the brutal murder of 26-year-old Pava LaPere in her apartment building.
And police say they were tracking Billingsley since September 19th after an alleged rape and arson attempted murder on Edmondson Avenue. He is a repeat violent offender.
So lots of people are asking, why was he out of prison to begin with, and why didn't police notify the public sooner?
Tonight, our team of reporters is pressing city and state officials for answers.
We begin with Keith Daniels and the lingering questions for BPD as we learn more about the timeline. Keith?
Well, Mary and Kai, we have the court documents. They detail that gruesome crime scene that police discovered. They also tell us how LaPere was killed, the cause of her homicide, blunt force trauma, and strangulation. But tonight, many questions remain in the investigation, including the handling of the search for Billingsley. Tonight, we're learning more about the moments before the murder of Pava LaPere and her contact with the accused killer, Jason Billingsley. Newly obtained charging documents in this case, and another violent crime police say Billingsley, a convicted felon and sex offender, committed just days apart. First, an attempted murder, then rape and arson in West Baltimore, September 19th. Then the murder of LaPere at her apartment building near Mount Vernon. Investigators saying now it happened Friday, September 22nd. The 26-year-old woman's body discovered on the roof of the building that following Monday. Tonight, court documents revealing surveillance video show LaPere entering her apartment building at about 10:30 p.m. last Friday. Later, she got on the couch in the lobby, walked into the front door. She's seen speaking to a man who police say waved her to the door. Then both of them are seen getting on the elevator together. The footage shows him later leaving a stairwell into the lobby.
We don't know if there are any connections previously to Miss LaPere or Mr. Billingsley.
Baltimore Police peppered with questions Wednesday over what the department did know. Billingsley had been identified as the suspect who raped a woman and attempted to kill her and another man inside a home on Edmondson Avenue, September 19th. In that incident, court documents reveal the female told investigators Billingsley identified himself as maintenance. She said he kicked in the front door, pointed a gun at her, duct taped her, and handcuffed the other victim, then raped, slashed, and set them on fire. A warrant was issued for Billingsley's arrest not long after, but the public never notified. When questioned,
this was not a random act of violence.
Acting Baltimore Police Commissioner Richard Worley said there was no indication Billingsley was committing random acts, and investigators were actively tracking him. Still, Fox 45 News pressed Worley on why no alert for the public.
You said Billingsley was being tracked, yet he was still able to commit another violent, heinous act. How is that so? And at what point do you weigh the community's safety? This was a violent rapist who was roaming the streets of Baltimore, and the public had no idea. Could this knowledge have prevented Pava's death?
I'm not going to speculate whether it could have prevented her death, but what I know we did is as soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference.
But during the initial press conference, BPD also not revealing Billingsley was in fact the suspect in both cases.
Because there was 2 victims from Edmondson Avenue that were still out. One was in the hospital, one was at their location. We had to get them protection if we were going to put that information out.
Well, Worley said he's confident the department handled both cases properly. He said if there was a mistake, he would say there was a mistake, like he said he did during the Brooklyn Day mass shooting. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Well, more charges for Billingsley out of Baltimore County. According to charging documents, he stole a gun from his friend's home in Owings Mills. Investigators say the theft happened on Monday, the same day LaPere's body was found. Investigators have not said if Billingsley was armed when he was arrested.
Given Billingsley's criminal history, many are asking why someone with such a record was out on the streets. City leaders say the laws surrounding repeat offenders need to be re-examined.
Rapists shouldn't be let out early, period. When you rape someone, no matter if it's someone's daughter, son, their wife, like, you should not get out early, period, for that kind of offense.
Well, Billingsley had more than half of his sentence suspended in a plea deal. According to City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, that deal in the case was below guidelines. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker spoke with the judge not involved in the case, but who talks about how sentences are determined.
It was 2015 when Jason Billingsley pled guilty to a first-degree sex offense. Sentenced to 30 years in prison, he struck a plea deal where he was only ordered to serve 14 years.
And the plea was a little bit below guidelines. With every single case, there are different issues that you have to look at.
According to the court transcript, Judge Emmanuel Brown said he didn't think the sentence was long enough, noting the prosecutors struck the agreement when the victim in the case didn't want to testify.
We even know that the judge who handled the case was a little reluctant in terms of accepting that plea bargain.
Retired Judge Wanda Keys Hurd, who was not associated with this case, spent 21 years on the bench in Baltimore City Circuit Court, at one point serving as chief judge. She says they do their best with the information they're given, saying in sex offense cases it can be especially difficult for victims to testify.
In that instance, if you're having problems with your witness, the judge then has to weigh whether or not going along with the guilty plea is worth the chance versus the alternative, which would be no guilty finding at all. In other words, if the victim doesn't cooperate, it is very likely the state can't prove their case.
Ultimately, Billingsley was released last October on good behavior credits, a decision not made by the judge. But other judges' decisions have been called into question in Baltimore in several recent cases.
Right there.
Judge Melissa Finn has handed out a series of high-profile rulings, including the decision to vacate Adnan Syed's murder sentence, which was later reinstated.
This is crazy.
She also accepted a plea deal from Marilyn Mosby's office that released convicted arsonist Luther Trent. Trent served less than 6 months in jail after he admitted to trying to burn down his ex-girlfriend's house. Finn eventually overturned the plea deal. Last June, police say Austin Davidson killed a Wicomico County Sheriff's deputy. In 2019, he'd faced 20 years for armed robbery, but Judge Finn sentenced him to probation before judgment, setting him free. And days after that case, Fox 45 News learned Joseph Black, the man accused of hitting and dragging a police officer with his car, was also out on a plea deal from Finn's courtroom. He had been charged with attempted homicide, but that was pleaded down to handgun charges, setting him free after serving 20 months. Providing such information to the public was the goal of the Judicial Transparency Act, which aimed to produce a report card for judges detailing the sentences and plea deals offered, along with their names. The plan passed, but without the names of the judges released with the data.
This creates as much transparency as a brick wall. They're hiding behind a closed courtroom and behind their robe.
However, Hurd says the information is all there for the public to find.
Most people can find out where the case was, and who arraigned the case, who heard any motions on the case, and where the jury trial was set, and how many days it was there, and who sentenced the defendant. Yeah. That's information you can find if you want it. So I don't agree with you that it's a secret and it's not known, and I just don't agree with that.
She says it's important to remember judges are voted into office, and if you don't trust their judgment, you can elect someone else.
I know as a judge for 21 years, I didn't get a crystal ball that told me whether I should or should not release someone on probation. You make your best considered judgment decision. That's why the citizens hired you, and I literally mean hired you. The citizens of Baltimore City vote for the judges, and they trust your judgment. and you exercise that judgment without a crystal ball.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Well, Fox 45 News also pressed Governor Moore on the changes he wants to see to repeat offender legislation in Maryland. Mackenzie Frost has his response tonight.
Baltimore City leaders say that Jason Billingsley is a repeat violent offender, and we're pressing Governor Wes Moore to find out if he's going to demand lawmakers in Annapolis pass legislation to implement tougher penalties. Maryland laws under the microscope again. Jason Billingsley suspected of brutally killing Baltimore Tech CEO Pava LaPere at her apartment building. Despite being denied parole twice, Billingsley released in October 2022 after serving 2/3 of his sentence for first-degree sex offense.
In the state of Maryland, you can earn what's called diminution credits. It was more or less the systematic, to me, failure in terms of what happened.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates says the diminution credit system should be re-evaluated, especially since in 2016, the Justice Reinvestment Act allowed Billingsley, who is a convicted sex offender, to tally up good behavior credits.
Maybe the legislature could maybe look at what first-degree sex offense or first-degree rape. Are these individuals still going to be eligible for diminution credits?
While touring Baltimore City Community College, we pressed Governor Wes Moore. When will we see you demand lawmakers take action to ensure that a suspect like this doesn't get released to commit another heinous crime like we saw?
Pava was a light, and she was a leader in our community. She was a leader in their tech community, and she was failed. I want results, and we've got to move on this because Pava was failed, and we have to do a better job of making sure we have laws in the books that are protecting our community and getting these violent offenders off of our streets.
There was a bill introduced during last session and several years prior that would have targeted violent repeat offenders, and it never moved. Will that change during next session?
I want to make sure that in the next session, and our administration will be working closely with the administration to make sure that we have bills that will make it to my desk that can be pushed, moved, and that I can sign that can make sure we're getting repeat violent offenders off of our streets.
Are you demanding the Democrats do that?
I'm going to be working with our legislature to ensure that we can have legislation that will move, make it to my desk, and that I will sign to make sure we're getting and keeping violent offenders off of our streets.
Not a direct answer from the governor about the Violent Firearms Offender Act, which called for tougher penalties for repeat violent offenders. Meanwhile, State Senator Antonio Hayes suggests narrowing who is allowed to be released under the diminution credit system. Would you support legislation that eliminates the good time served credits for someone in a situation like this?
It depends. When it comes to extreme levels of violence, I think that is something worth considering.
And remember, the bill targeting repeat violent offenders has been introduced year after year after year without movement. So it's unclear if 2024 will be any different. When asked about making changes to the diminution credit system, the governor's office says all options are on the table to ensure Maryland communities are safe. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis. If you want to contact them about public safety legislation, their phone numbers, email addresses right there on your screen.